His name is William Atchison. He's 21 years old, and it was a single coward shooter. This was a planned event. The gun he used was a Glock pistol that he purchased locally and legally. He lived in Aztec with his parents. He worked at a local gas station, and he planned this thing. It's just a shame that he wasn't on our radar. I don't think he had as much as a traffic ticket or anything else.
There are a lot of different gaming websites out there, different active shooter type of gaming websites, a lot of different things out there. Occasionally we'll get tips from other people that get on those gaming websites where people have put some sort of disturbing type of message. That's what occurred in this one.
On December 7th, 2017, 21-year-old William Atchison walked into Aztec High School in New Mexico, disguised as a student, carrying out a premeditated attack. Armed with a Glock 9mm, he shot and killed Casey Marquez and Francisco Paco Fernandez before taking his own life. A former student with a history of violent online rhetoric, Atchison had been investigated by the FBI but was never deemed a threat. His attack was later classified as domestic terrorism, highlighting the dangers of radicalization and missed warning signs. William Edward Atchison was born on March 18, 1996, the youngest of two sons in his family. He spent his early years in Belen, New Mexico, before his family later relocated to Aztec, New Mexico, a small town of around 6,000 residents located in the northwestern part of the state. His father, Robert Atchison, worked as a truck driver, while his mother, Diane, stayed at home. Atchison attended Aztec High School, where he reportedly struggled with social interactions. His father later claimed that he was frequently bullied by other students. One of the most severe incidents allegedly occurred in a welding class, where Atchison was physically attacked and stabbed in the chest with an unknown sharp object. Though the extent of his injury remains unclear, this incident seemingly reinforced his isolation and resentment towards his peers. His difficulties extended beyond school. A neighbor recalled that she had called the Aztec police on Atchison twice due to disturbing behavior. The first time was because he was caught firing an airsoft pellet gun at her dogs, an act that disturbed the household. The second incident occurred during a dispute with the neighbor's husband. Atchison allegedly threatened to shoot the man after an argument about cannabis that had been found near their property. The hostility stemming from these disputes led the neighbor to ban her sons from playing with Atchison, further deepening his social isolation. She described him as a boy who spent a lot of time inside and alone. His issues were also evident at work. A former co-worker at the giant gas station where he worked stated that Atchison was bullied at school, implying that his experiences with mistreatment followed him into his working life. Atchison's mental state and obsession with mass shootings began surfacing publicly during his high school years. On March 9, 2012, he was suspended from Aztec High School for an incident that deeply disturbed teachers and students alike. During a class, he walked up to the whiteboard and began writing a detailed timeline of the 1999 Columbine High School massacre, one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. His actions suggested a fixation on mass violence, but despite this disturbing behavior, the school did not escalate the matter beyond a suspension. In particular, the complaint was never reported to the school's resource officer, meaning law enforcement was not made aware of his actions. Atchison had also been in long-term counseling for many years, indicating a history of emotional and psychological struggles. He was receiving therapy in Farmington, a nearby town, but his original counselor retired. He saw a new therapist twice, but then abruptly stopped attending sessions. Around this same time, he dropped out of Aztec High School on August 20th, 2012, just months after his suspension. He never returned. After leaving school, Atchison began working at a local giant gas station near his home. While little is known about his performance as an employee, the monotony of the job, coupled with his social isolation, likely contributed to his growing resentment and distorted worldview. He remained in Aztec, spending most of his time online, engaging in discussions on far-right extremist forums and mass shooting communities, a digital space where he would further radicalize himself. William maintained a prolific online presence, often engaging in extremist discourse, trolling, and glorifying mass shooters. His digital footprint spanned multiple platforms, where he fostered a persona that was both provocative and deeply entrenched in far-right ideology. His online activities resulted in him making many enemies, as he frequently clashed with others in internet communities. Atchison's internet activity reflected his extremist views, as he openly posted pro-Hitler and pro-Trump sentiments. He was an active participant in various white supremacist forums and was known for using aliases that referenced mass shooters. Among his many usernames, he notably called himself Future Mass Shooter and adopted names inspired by infamous mass murderers, further emphasizing his fixation on violent figures. One of his primary online roles was as a moderator on Encyclopedia Dramatica, a Wikipedia-style website known for its controversial, often offensive content. Under the username Al Gore, Atchison contributed extensively to the site. However, despite his position as a moderator, he was often criticized and ridiculed by other users. Other users on the site would frequently mock him by asking, "How is your manifesto going?" Atchison's father later informed investigators that he had observed his son visiting neo-Nazi websites, which he believed were exerting a negative influence on him. In 2014, Atchison posted on the website Think Atheist, expressing deep frustration with his life in rural New Mexico. He lamented his bleak future and lack of direction, asking for advice on how to turn his life around. His post read, "Look, I'm sorry if I'm rude and hateful or anything, but I don't know what to do. I've lived no life for nearly 19 years. How can I become polite and make some friends out there in this world?" Despite his apparent plea for help, his post received several hundred views, but no responses. His later posts, however, took a darker turn. He became increasingly fixated on mass shooters, frequently posting about his desire to commit violence, as well as his admiration for Hitler and interest in Satanism. His posts were riddled with anti-Semitic, misogynistic, and racist rhetoric. Atchison repeatedly discussed suicide thoughts, referring to himself as mentally ill and detailing his struggles with major depression, inability to feel joy, intense levels of sadistic desire, and various addictions to substances. However, in contrast to his self-diagnosed depression, other posts reflected narcissistic tendencies, hinting at a conflicting self-perception. His online behavior suggested that he saw mass shootings as a way to achieve notoriety, echoing the patterns of other individuals who sought infamy through violence. The Anti-Refugee Club was a breeding ground for violent ideologies. While some members claimed it was meant as satire, others, including political scientist Florian Hartleb, described it as a virtual international network of potential mass murderers. Within the group, mass shooters like Anders Breivik were idolized as heroic figures, and members fantasized about committing their own acts of mass violence. Discussions frequently revolved around weapons, tactics, and mass murder, as well as first-person shooter video games, such as Counter-Strike, which served as both a bonding activity and a means of visualizing violent fantasies. Atchison facilitated connections between other extremists. He introduced a 15-year-old German member of the group to Sanboli, and this teenager was later arrested for plotting a mass shooting. The investigation into the teenager ultimately led back to Atchison, but despite this connection, the Stuttgart State Criminal Police Office did not pursue further action against him. The Anti-Refugee Club was eventually shut down in September 2017, just months before Atchison carried out his own attack. However, his admiration for Sanboli continued. After the Munich shooting, Atchison wrote a tribute to Sanboli on Encyclopedia Dramatica, referring to him as a true Aryan and true German. This act of glorification reinforced his deep admiration for those who committed mass violence. Despite his extensive online activity and extremist ideologies, William Atchison had no prior criminal record. However, in March 2016, he was investigated by the FBI after authorities flagged an alarming online post that indicated a potential threat. The post read, "I'm plotting a mass shooting. What are some weapons that are good for killing a lot of people within a budget?" Investigators traced the post back to an IP address linked to the home where Atchison lived, but instead of being directly associated with him, the post was linked to his older brother's computer. This would later cause significant confusion in the investigation. On March 24, 2016, FBI agents arrived at Atchison's home in Aztec, New Mexico, to question him. During their interview, Atchison downplayed his intentions, dismissing the post as nothing more than internet trolling. He claimed he was simply trying to provoke a reaction and that he had no real plans to carry out a shooting. When agents pressed him further, Atchison admitted to past thoughts and acknowledged a deep fascination with school shooters and firearms, but he reassured them that he had no violent intentions. In what appeared to be a mocking gesture, Atchison even suggested to the FBI agents that they should put him on a watch list, as if daring them to take action. Despite his troubling statements and interests, the investigation concluded that he had not committed a crime. Agents determined that, other than owning an airsoft pellet gun, he did not possess any firearms, and no further action was taken against him. The case was subsequently closed. Following the FBI visit, Atchison openly discussed the incident on his YouTube channel, describing how the FBI had investigated him due to someone reporting his profile. He claimed the agents ultimately dismissed the situation, believing that he was not a real threat, and that they understood the satire behind his post. However, the miscommunication between the FBI and local law enforcement created a significant gap in oversight. When the FBI passed information about the case to the Aztec Police Department, they mistakenly provided details about Atchison's older brother instead of Atchison himself. As a result, a use caution bulletin was issued inside the Aztec Police Department featuring a sketch, name, and photo of Atchison's brother, identifying him as a potential threat. This incorrect information was never corrected, and there was no follow-up investigation to confirm whether Atchison had access to weapons or had continued making threats. The local school district and school resource officers were never notified about the incident, meaning Atchison was able to remain under the radar, despite his past suspension for writing about the Columbine massacre. In September 2017, just 3 months before his attack, Atchison's online chat group, the Anti-Refugee Club, was removed from the gaming platform Steam. However, no further investigations followed this action, and authorities failed to recognize that Atchison was continuing to spiral towards violence. In November 2017, approximately 1 month before the attack, Atchison traveled to Sportsman's Warehouse in Farmington, New Mexico, accompanied by his father. There, he legally purchased a 9mm Glock 19 Gen 4 semi-automatic pistol, which he would later use in the shooting. Despite Atchison's history of concerning online behavior and his past FBI investigation, there were no legal barriers preventing him from purchasing a firearm, as he had no criminal record or documented mental health restrictions. His father, apparently unaware of his son's true intentions, made an ominous joke after the purchase, warning him not to point it at anyone and never do a school shooting. 2 weeks before the attack, Atchison and his older brother went out to a remote area to practice shooting. They fired both the newly acquired Glock 19 and a .22 caliber rifle. Several weeks before the shooting, Atchison visited Aztec High School under the pretense of being interested in re-enrolling. During this visit, a teacher unknowingly gave him a tour of the school, showing him hallways, classrooms, and emergency exits. This reconnaissance trip allowed him to study the layout and identify weak points for his planned attack. Atchison's father later told police that his son had been playing a video game that simulated a school shooting, which may have served as a virtual practice run for his real-life plan. In the hours leading up to the attack, Atchison showed no outward signs of distress. The day before the shooting, he had a casual conversation with 2 police officers at a gas station where he worked. They were there to refuel their patrol cars, and nothing seemed unusual about his behavior. However, inside his home, Atchison had prepared a timeline for the attack, outlining each step leading up to his death. His plan was brutally methodical. Wait for students to get off the school buses and enter the building. Enter the school, take a classroom hostage, and open fire, before ultimately taking his own life at 8 a.m. At 6:51 a.m., just before heading out, Atchison typed a final manifesto on a thumb drive that was later discovered on his body. His note captured his hatred for life, school, and work, stating, quote, "If things go according to plan, today would be when I die. I go somewhere and gear up, then hold a class hostage and go apeshit, then blow my brains out. Work sucks, school sucks, life sucks. I just want out of this shit." At 7:30 a.m., he set out for Aztec High School, fully armed and ready to carry out his final act of destruction. On the morning of December 7th, 2017, William Atchison entered Aztec High School, dressed as a student, blending in with those arriving for the school day. Concealed in his backpack was his 9mm handgun and multiple loaded magazines. At 8:04 a.m., Atchison walked into the 800 to 900 building, a second-floor hallway where multiple classrooms were located. Unnoticed, he slipped into a student bathroom to prepare. Francisco Fernandez, a 17-year-old junior, happened to walk into the same bathroom at the wrong time. He unknowingly stumbled upon Atchison loading his firearm. Without hesitation, Atchison shot him before stepping out into the hallway. There, he encountered Casey Jordan Marquez, also 17 years old, a cheerleader and senior at Aztec High. She was unaware of what had just happened in the restroom. Atchison immediately opened fire, killing her on the spot. After murdering 2 students in cold blood, Atchison began to stalk the halls, walking up and down with his firearm raised. He fired randomly into classrooms, attempting to hit more students. Despite his intent to cause mass casualties, his plan was quickly interrupted. One of the most crucial figures in minimizing the death toll that day was Thomas Emery Hill, the school's custodian. As soon as he heard gunfire, Hill ran toward the shooter, yelling about an active shooter and urging teachers to lock their classroom doors. His quick thinking gave teachers and students critical seconds to barricade themselves inside rooms, preventing further loss of life. Katie Potter, a 74-year-old substitute teacher, was teaching a class of 17 students in the computer lab when she heard the loudspeaker lockdown announcement. However, as a substitute, she did not have keys to lock the door. Thinking quickly, she ushered her students into a small office inside the lab and pushed a couch against the door, forming an impromptu barricade. Moments later, Atchison arrived. He shouted that he knew they were inside, and then fired multiple shots through the walls and door. Despite his attempts to kill, none of the students were hit. After failing to enter the computer lab, Atchison continued walking through the school. However, police had received multiple 911 calls and responded within a minute of the first reports. As they approached the school, officers shot out a window and entered the building, quickly moving toward the gunfire. Atchison realized his time was up. At 8:16 a.m., exactly 12 minutes after first entering the school, he put the Glock 19 to his head and pulled the trigger, ending his life before police could reach him. Eventually, officers cleared the building and instructed students to exit toward the back parking lot. They were later reunited with parents at McGee Park, a designated meeting area for families. Other schools in the area went into lockdown, fearing that the attack could be part of a larger event. The investigation into the Aztec High School shooting was carried out by multiple law enforcement agencies, including the San Juan County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, and the New Mexico State Police. Authorities quickly determined that shooter William Atchison had acted alone and that his attack was premeditated. While law enforcement did not establish a single, definitive motive, investigators agreed that Atchison was determined to create as much carnage as he possibly could, according to San Juan County Sheriff Ken Christensen. His intent was to kill indiscriminately, as demonstrated by his decision to fire randomly into classrooms and hallways, as well as his multiple reloads. Despite this, investigators found no indication that Atchison specifically targeted Francisco Fernandez or Casey Marquez the 2 students he murdered. Shortly after the attack, Bryce Current, a captain at the sheriff's office, speculated that Atchison's primary motive was simply to gain infamy. A week after the shooting, the Daily Beast published an investigative article detailing Atchison's online presence in far-right extremist communities. The Southern Poverty Law Center later followed up on this research, arguing that Atchison's white supremacist beliefs played a role in the attack. The SPLC pointed to a pattern of at least 13 other mass shooters since 2014 who had similar alt-right ideologies. However, the San Juan County Sheriff's Office disputed this claim. Investigators stated that while Atchison had expressed racist and neo-Nazi views online, there was no evidence linking those beliefs to the attack or his choice of victims. The department released a statement emphasizing that Atchison's primary motivation was mass murder for personal notoriety, rather than racial or political ideology. Germany's Federal Criminal Police Office had known about Atchison's connection to Sanboli as early as December 9, 2017, just 2 days after the Aztec shooting. However, Germany's Bavarian State Criminal Police Office, which was in charge of the Sanboli investigation, was not informed until June 2018. This delay led to criticism of German law enforcement's failure to share intelligence that could have helped prevent Atchison's attack. By August 2018, the San Juan County Sheriff's Office had concluded its investigation. They confirmed that Atchison acted alone and had no accomplices. He chose December 7th, the anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack, as the date for his shooting, possibly because a relative of his had died in the 1941 attack. Atchison's autopsy revealed that he had died by suicide, suffering a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. His body had bruised knuckles, likely from physical stress or striking objects. Additionally, investigators found several neo-Nazi symbols and words written on his body, including a swastika and SS runes, the acronym AMOG, Alpha Male of Group, a manosphere term, the phrase "build wall" above his left knee, the words "your home" on his right groin. Toxicology results showed no drugs or alcohol in his system at the time of the shooting. Following the attack, New Mexico legislators approved funding for enhanced school safety measures, including upgraded fencing and reinforced entry points. Aztec High School implemented additional security measures, such as increasing the presence of school resource officers, securing the perimeter, and installing remote locking doors with radio alert technology. The incident also sparked efforts by the New Mexico Police Chiefs Association to advocate for red flag laws and reclassify school shootings as a fourth-degree felony, similar to bomb threats. A new security door was later installed outside Aztec High School. Some analysts classified the shooting as an example of incel-related violence. Atchison had previously used the online alias Elliot Roger, a reference to the perpetrator of the 2014 Isla Vista killings, and had referred to Roger as the Supreme Gentleman. However, reports later suggested it was unclear whether Atchison identified as an incel. One analysis categorized the attack as a mixed motives shooting, lacking an explicitly political or ideological purpose, despite Atchison's references to incel-related beliefs. The fact that the attack did not target women and had an unclear motive further complicated this classification. In contrast, political scientist Florian Hartleb argued that Atchison's far-right markings and admiration of Trump indicated that he was not merely an apolitical spree killer. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the mother of victim Casey Marquez established Aztec Strong SJC, a nonprofit organization providing college scholarships to students in New Mexico and Colorado in her daughter's memory. Her attorney later criticized the FBI's handling of Atchison's case, arguing that their inaction contributed to both the Aztec and Munich shootings. He asserted that the FBI had probable cause to investigate Atchison's computer, which could have revealed critical warning signs. In 2022, Marquez's mother called the shooting a collective failure emphasizing that the community lost not only the two victims, but also Atchison himself, who had been raised by the same community mine was. Criminologist Gillian Peterson echoed criticism of the FBI, arguing they should have taken more proactive steps, especially after asking Atchison whether he would see a counselor, but failing to ensure he received help. She stated that FBI agents did not recognize that Atchison was in a very serious mental health crisis and a potential danger to himself and others. However, former FBI official Catherine Schweit defended the Bureau's handling of the case, while psychologist and mass shooter expert Peter Langman agreed, stating that the FBI had conducted a thorough investigation.